For a quarter of a century, one man has held an iron grip on one of the world's biggest nuclear powers. Today, we're digging into the Putin files to decode his remarkable and, let's face it, highly controversial 25-year rule. So, right at the center of it all is a question that just seems to baffle the West. How does a leader who manipulates elections, silences his critics, and totally controls the media still have genuine, widespread support at home? Well, that's what we're calling the Putin paradox, and we're going to try and unravel it. I mean, just think about it for a second. If you're 25 years old in Russia today, you have literally known no other leader in your entire life. While other countries have seen this revolving door of presidents and prime ministers, Russia has had just one constant, dominant figure. And this chart, wow, it just paints such a stark picture. Since the year 2000, the US has had 4 different presidents, the UK, 7 prime ministers, and Russia, just 1. This isn't just a long time in office. In the world of modern politics, this is a massive outlier. And here's where the paradox we're trying to solve gets really interesting. Look at this number. A staggering 84% of young Russians, people aged 18 to 24, say they view him positively. Now, this begs the question, right? Is this just the result of nonstop state propaganda, or is there something deeper, something more genuine going on here? To really get to the bottom of this, we have to rewind the clock. We need to go back and understand the absolute chaos that created the perfect environment for a strongman to rise. We need to talk about the Russia of the 1990s. Okay, so after the Soviet Union collapsed in '91, Russia just plunged into what a lot of people called a jungle raj. Total lawlessness, total chaos. The economy shrank by almost half, corruption was everywhere, and this new class of super-rich oligarchs just swooped in and bought up massive state companies for basically nothing. It was a time of complete national humiliation. And for the average person, it was a nightmare. Imagine inflation. Not at 10%, not at 100%, but at its peak, get this, 10,000%. People's life savings were just wiped out overnight. Their pensions became worthless. The country was on its knees, and people were desperate for anyone who could bring back some kind of order. It was right in the middle of this desperation that the ruling elite, totally terrified of losing everything, made a choice that would change history. They looked for a loyal, kind of quiet bureaucrat, a former spy they thought they could control, to be their puppet. And that man, of course, was Vladimir Putin. Then, just as Putin is made prime minister, a series of absolutely horrific apartment bombings happen across Russia. Over 300 civilians were killed in their sleep. A real sense of terror just gripped the whole country. People were afraid to go to bed, thinking their building could be next. And while other leaders seemed completely paralyzed by fear, Putin, this unknown guy, stepped onto the national stage with this unforgettable, brutal promise. No apologies, no nuance, just raw, decisive force. And for a country that was desperate for a protector, hearing him vow to hunt the terrorists down, even if it meant wiping them out in the outhouse, was exactly what they wanted to hear. And in that one moment, the whole story was written. Putin was no longer some faceless bureaucrat from St. Petersburg. He was the strong, fearless leader who promised security when there was only chaos. And that powerful image, it didn't just rocket him into the presidency, it's been the foundation of his rule ever since. But here's the thing you absolutely have to remember about Putin. He wasn't a politician. He spent 15 years as a KGB agent. So to really understand how he rules, you have to look past the politics and into the shadowy world of spycraft. His playbook was written way before he ever set foot in the Kremlin. You can pretty much boil his entire method of control down to 4 core tactics, and they are all straight out of his KGB training manual. These aren't just policies, this is a whole system for holding on to power. First up, active measures. It's a classic KGB term that basically just means controlling the information. As soon as he got power, Putin systematically took over Russia's independent media. By 2010, something like 90% of it was under state control. This made sure that for most Russians, the only reality they ever saw or heard was the one the Kremlin wanted them to see. The second tactic is all about fear, but not through mass arrests like the old Soviet Union. It's much more surgical. The KGB had a saying, "Punish one, teach 100." You make a huge, brutal, public example out of one powerful enemy, and that ensures that everyone else stays quiet and obedient. And this tactic is definitely not a thing of the past. Just look at this chilling pattern of high-profile executives and oligarchs who've had these very untimely, very suspicious deaths, falling out of windows, dying in weird rituals. The message to the elite couldn't be clearer. Stay in line, or you could be next. Tactic number 3 is a classic from the world of espionage, compromat. This is the art of digging up dirt on anyone with influence. We're talking financial secrets, secret affairs, private videos, anything you can use as a weapon to blackmail and control them. There's an old KGB saying that just perfectly sums up this philosophy. Everyone has a file. In Putin's Russia, it's pretty much assumed that every powerful person, every politician, oligarch, journalist, has a file tucked away somewhere. It's the ultimate insurance policy for loyalty, creating a system where everyone is compromised and therefore controllable. And finally, all of these tactics come together to create the fourth one, a controlled reality. When you dominate the media and silence anyone who disagrees, you can frame any event however you want. So, while the rest of the world sees Russia invading Ukraine, Russian state TV is showing a special military operation to save their brotherly nation from Nazis. In this world, the facts don't really matter. Only the story the state tells you matters. So that brings us to the biggest question of all. What's the end game here? What's the point of this incredibly detailed system of control? Is it just about staying in power for the sake of it? Or are we watching a much bigger, more ambitious plan unfold? Well, a lot of analysts now believe there's a clear pattern emerging. They say there's a long-term plan to piece by piece restore Russia's old sphere of influence, to reverse what Putin once called the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century. When you look at the individual actions, creating economic blocks, annexing land, they start to look like pieces of a much larger puzzle. And this ambition has led a lot of observers to draw some pretty startling and, controversial historical parallels. When you look at the conditions, rising to power out of national humiliation, the narrative of restoring national greatness, and the tactic of annexing lands where people of the same ethnicity live, well, for many, the patterns are just too similar to ignore. And all of this leaves us with one final, big, provocative thought. Putin is a student of history. He knows the mistakes that past authoritarian leaders have made. So the question is this: is he just repeating history's playbook, or has he actually learned from it and created a more sophisticated, more durable kind of authoritarianism, one that's been upgraded for the 21st century? That's the question that could define our time.